The movie that is coming out probably right around the time that this episode comes out, called Triumph of the Heart, a new movie about Maximilian Kolbe.
At the time, we had $300,000. So compare that to like Cabrini's 40 million. We're like, we basically are Franciscan beggars that at every moment need people to give us like a miracle. You know, every day is like walking on water.
This was one of the best messages I thought of the film, you know, and Anthony, you're saying this film is a film that gives hope, and I really think it does.
This guy who's just really devoted to living in love and just treating other people not as, you know, whatever they labeled themselves, but just as another human, and loving the commandant, like the Nazi commandant, equally as much as he loved like one of the main characters.
There is a certain humility to the way that you provided. Basically, the whole movie takes place in the 13 days in the cell, and the relationships he has with the other cellmates takes front and center. One
of my favorite lines in the movie was when one of the other prisoners, after living in Auschwitz for however long, you know, says, I thought there was no good left in the world. And then I saw what he did yesterday, talking about Kolbe.
Kind of the poetry of the movie is that by the end, even though Kolbe has like given up all worldly power, he is more powerful than this commandant.
Yeah, I don't know. Exactly. Like, words just don't do the story justice. Not even a film does it justice. It really is something to meditate on.
Glory to Jesus Christ. It's Jelly. I'm going to welcome you to the What God Is Not podcast, where you can join Father Michael O'Loughlin and my godmother, Mother Natalia.
Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Glory forever.
Glory forever.
Great. Father Michael, why don't we just jump right into it? Can you,
Let's do it.
We had two other Glory Forevers today other than your own, and you said that you would introduce them, so I'm going to let you do that.
Yes. We are very honored, dear listeners, to have with us Anthony D'Ambrosio and Andrew Holzschuh. They are the director of photography for the movie that is coming out probably right around the time that this episode comes out, called Triumph of the Heart, a new movie about Maximilian Kolbe, who I don't think I've ever shared on this podcast, but I have a deep and long-lasting devotion to back from my Steubenville days and my discerning of the CFRs in New York City. So we are happy to have them on. As we record this, the movie has not come out yet. So we'll let them explain how you can see it when it does come out. But thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
And like Father Michael told you guys before recording, this is actually, it's very rare for us. We don't usually have like promo type episodes on the podcast. But we were very excited when we found out about the film, because when we found out about it, it was like a couple weeks after Father Michael and I had just gotten back from our pilgrimage to Eastern Europe, and we had been right outside Kolbe's cell when we went to Auschwitz, and we're both really moved by that experience, and so we were like, let's make an exception and talk about the film. So
yeah, we're honored. We're honored to be honored guests.
Absolutely.
Amen. I loved, one of the things I loved about the film was I think you had at least one little Easter egg. I'm ashamed to only say one, although I have one I'm going to bring up later, but he kept on talking about militia, and you the Militia Immaculata was something I became a member of now 25 years ago, when I was at Steubenville and made my consecration and wore the chain, etc. I've now given away 2 chains to other people that notice them, know that they're chains for the Militia Immaculata, started by Maximilian Kolbe. And then, but I do not have one now. I've had another one given to me, and I've given it away again. So I'm awaiting the gift of a Militia Immaculata chain. But I noticed that without explaining the Militia Immaculata, there were a couple references to militia in the movie. So thank you for throwing that in there for those of us that actually knew what you were referring to when you mentioned the militia.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think one of the big challenges of doing a movie like this is how do you reference to it in a way that doesn't detract from the drama of the moment, that feels sort of like organic to what's actually happening on screen, and doesn't feel like, oh, we have to plug this because the saint was about this, or we have to explain all of this for everybody and kind of hit them over the head with it. So we tried to toe that line of being subtle and dramatic, and also referencing the kind of the things that we all know and love that are important to us about his story, the two crowns, his relationship with Mary, etc.
I almost thought that you were going to go the entire movie without showing him with a beard, and I was horribly disappointed. And then all of a sudden, there it was in all of its glory, the beard, even better than the photos. I said, "Oh, it's been redeemed. The movie's been redeemed."
Oh, that is so funny. You have no idea what we had to go through for that beard, man.
Oh, I definitely want to hear about this.
Oh man.
So do our listeners.
Andrew, do you want to explain what happened with the beard, where the beard came from?
So the scenes that we filmed the beard with were some of the first scenes that we filmed in October. We filmed a little bit in September that year, but then the majority of like principal photography started, and those were like our first shoot days with the beard. And there was some trouble with it. I'll just leave it at that. We got it figured out. What you see on the screen looks great. That's all that matters. But
you don't want to give any more nitty gritty, dude? Come on, we're on a podcast.
I'm a bit more the magician that likes to keep his secrets. But I was fine with it. Anthony wasn't. Yeah. It was a lot of work in post.
What you see is a VFX beard. It is.
It was a mix. Yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah.
We had to correct some of it because when you're working with a big crew for the first time and they're all new and you're in a new country and you're just really nervous, and we're like both just trying to like not have a meltdown, and it was one of those times when like Anthony didn't really have, and I'm like just focused on camera. I'm like, I don't know, beard looks fine. Like I'm dealing with all these other things that I have to deal with, and like. It was just, we were developing a relationship with our crew still. And so,
I didn't know that I could just say no,
yeah, exactly.
Wasn't ready for that yet. I mean, it's part of the difficulty of making a movie is just that you have all of these different departments that all have teams, and you have this incredibly tight schedule where anything that it's all sort of working like this machine, and it has to work like this machine. Somebody goes to hair and makeup, somebody goes to costume, or vice versa. And that choreographed pass off is like incredibly important, because if one of them breaks down, the entire schedule for the day breaks down, and you're fighting against light, you're fighting against budget. Certain people are going to be there present for the afternoon and not in the morning. But if you get pushed back, then those people, you still have to pay them for that time. So you have all of these different logistical things that are really important for making it work. And on the very first day when they sent him forward with the beard, I immediately felt like, oh, Kolbe is not Gandalf. Like, this is not like a wizard beard, but this is what I'm seeing right now is the wizard beard. And in a way that didn't quite feel like natural. And at the time I was kind of like, it can they're experts, like it's fine, we'll figure it out. But then, we were like, when we saw the footage, we were just like, this feels exactly like how it felt on the day. Like there's, that little, it was there. And so you would have no idea how much it costs to deal with that little glitch, to find the right person that can fix that problem on a shoestring budget like ours. It's crazy, but it looks great now. So,
I think it was that Disney movie Tangled, where obviously they had so much animated hair and so much of the movie was around it because it was Rapunzel, that they said they had a team of like 25 people that just worked on her hair. Like that was all that it was. And so I honestly, you guys did a great job. I could not tell any of it was CGI whatsoever, but I almost thought about that. I thought, what do you do for something like that to make it? Everybody expects a beard. We've all seen the photo, right? Yeah. And so, anyway, well done with whatever mix you had to do.
I think that actually makes me think of something that I wanted. There were two things in particular that I wanted to talk to y'all about the process of creating the film. But one was that I love what you're saying here, Anthony, because like that it's just one detail, and it's not for much of the movie, but it was clear in the film that every detail was important, and that you wanted everything to be good, you wanted everything to be beautiful, you wanted everything to be well done. Like there wasn't anything that seemingly you were okay with just that can just be good enough, let's just move on. And that's something I really loved about the film, because so here's an honesty moment. I am, neither of you know me, but our listeners know that I'm extremely guileless. I'm named after Nathaniel. I took Natalia as a form of feminine of Nathaniel because there's no guile in me, for better or for worse. And I had this panic moment after we agreed to have y'all on the podcast because I hadn't watched the film yet. And I was like, I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, what if it's terrible? And then what am I going to do? Because I can't pretend to like something that I don't like. And I'm not going to promote something. and I can't, in good conscience, promote something that I don't actually think people should watch. So I was obviously very relieved that I loved the film and was and can in good conscience promote it. But one of the things is because I don't typically like movies about saints, because you said this even in the trailer, Anthony, I think, that, you know, a lot of the movies that we have out there about saints are these like cheesy Christian films that are just not done well, and they're done with poor budgets, and I get that, and props to you people for still doing it, but I don't want to watch them. And the Triumph of the Heart film was good. It was very good, but it was also beautiful. And I guess I want to know kind of just what was that a frequent conversation in the process amongst those working on the film, of just like coming back to that reminder that this needs to be beautiful. It needs to be good quality. We can't cut corners, things like that.
I'll let Andrew respond to that one. I feel like he's kind of Andrew is our German quality control director. Like we were. It didn't matter what our budget was. We were making a Mercedes. You know what I mean? So that's Andrew's approach.
Yeah, it's funny. I've learned more about just like family heritage and how that comes into your own personal, there's just some trickle down, and Anthony's Italian and I'm German, and I think we both have a little bit of Irish in us, and like it plays out very much. We both are like, whenever like it's like really intense, stressful, like, hey, we're behind schedule and we're screwed if we don't go now, and everything's gonna fall apart. And there's this like really intense energy, but also like Anthony is like the very social one and kind of like wrangling people around the table figuratively, and I'm the like, essentially it will be a Mercedes or it will not be a car. Done. Like,
and Andrew walked in. So the first day that Andrew came, so we have all these people that we've like stuffed into. To give a sense of like, so Cabrini, that movie was made beautifully. I think it was like an amazing work of craftsmanship. Regardless of kind of what you thought about like the messaging or whatever, I think as a film, it was really a masterpiece. But they spent $40 million to make that masterpiece. And that $40 million, it means a lot. What it means is that you can control a lot of things. You can solve problems that come up in the moment by throwing money at those problems. You can buy yourself more time. All of these sorts of things that making a movie is hard regardless of what the budget is, because you're trying to sort of force reality to conform to almost like a dreamlike vision that the director and the team sort of is kind of rallying around. And one, it's hard to get everybody on the same page about that vision, but two, it's really hard to sort of force daylight and like weather and all of that to sort of behave for you to get the shots and to sort of make that believable in a way that weaves together. And so I think that really it was, we had 400,000. At the time we had $300,000. So compared that to like Cabrini's 40 million, we basically are Franciscan beggars that at every moment need people to give us like a miracle. Every day is like walking on water to get the thing that we need in order to make the high quality kind of piece of artwork that we sort of sought out to make. And part of what that meant was that we had, there could be no ego. Like anybody that was a part of the project, you weren't getting a trailer. Like you were we were going to get you a standby flight where you had to go through 4 different, like, you know, neck-breaking, anxiety-inducing layovers and carry all of your own stuff. Like Andrew had to carry basically like 400 pounds of equipment himself through different train systems to get to Poland, you know, like from Germany. And we could give you a whole kind of like rundown of what that was like when he showed up after that. But, you know, we have everybody kind of descending into this one place when they get there, which is a hostel that we basically booked out completely, that had room for about, I think, 70 people. And we get there and there's no dining room, there's no kitchen table. Like, there's 2 fridges, 1 shower, 1 wash machine, and we're supposed to be
and instead of a ceiling fan, a security camera.
There's like security cameras for the owners that are looking at you. You know, you're like, nothing about this feels comfortable. We're stuffing all these people.
Employee housing for like, I think probably industrial type stuff.
Right. Yeah. So people are like on cots. You have like 10, 20 people to a room. It feels like a high school mission trip, except worse. Like, and that's sort of the glamour that people are showing up into. And we're already sort of asking people for a lot to kind of give us like a sense of trust. And Andrew walks in with this big flag with NASA's like with the NASA like getting to the moon thing on it, which was like, this will not fail because of me. And he puts it up right in the main space.
It didn't go well. I had to take it down. Camera department. That was our. It can. In hindsight, the motto, like, it will not fail because of me, can be taken different ways, but in the context of the astronaut who said it, basically, like, that's how they got to the moon. Like, there are so many little, I mean, actually, like, the Apollo missions are a great, if you're like a history buff and you're into like the Apollo missions and all that, like, for everything not to just, like, space doesn't want you to be there,
right?
You know, and it's like the world in some ways did not want us to make this film. Like, in some ways, it's kind of what it just, I don't know.
That's what it is.
Just felt right.
It's totally right.
Myself,
it's totally and a great example, actually. Like, and I guess to your point about, were you thinking about this sort of quality like every single moment? And the answer is totally yes. Like, we knew that what we wanted to make was would be fitting to the content and to the story that we were trying to tell. I had a director when I first was sort of talking about doing this that had done a couple of different movies. He actually did one that was executive produced by Terrence Malick, who's like a great director. So to sort of be mentored under him and to work under him under Tree of Life and then go forward and do his first feature-length film with Terrence Malick as the executive producer, like, that's a big deal. And so he had a lot of wisdom and gone through sort of his own turmoil, and he knew and understood just how difficult of a thing that we were trying to pull off. And he was like, look, Anthony, like, if you want to make this for your first film, you have to understand everything has to be perfect. Like, if you go and you make a sports movie about a bunch of orphans winning like something, winning a prize and getting money to save the farm, like, great, you can do that and you can make a B movie and sort of learn all the lessons of a filmmaker. And that will still be a massive victory and a miracle for you to even do that. But for you to go and do an Auschwitz movie for your first movie where the content is a historic saint that is beloved, like, you don't get any margin for error. There's no space where you get forgiven for, you know, somebody having a beard that shouldn't have a beard, or somebody not having a beard that does have, you know, like, everything has to be perfect. And I really knew that was the case. Like, there's just no way that we can let something through that is second rate. And I don't know, like, how we were able to do that, but what really, I guess, transpired to allow that to be good was that people just kept on. And I was talking with Andrew about this, like, because we were humble and we sort of put out, this is our vision for this thing and we're going to do it right. Artists that want to do it right will come. Like, they will come and they will give their heart to the thing, because that's what every artist wants to do. Like, nobody wants to make the soul-crushing Doritos commercial. I mean, maybe if you do, it's kind of funny. But my point is just that, like, how most creatives subsist day to day is making terrible stuff for the corporate machine that is not really like doing something that they set out to do when they first desired to become an artist or a filmmaker or whatever. And so we were just giving people the chance to do that. Like, here you go, flex every creative muscle that you have and more. And this is a place where you get to show your real salt and your real worth in devoting it to a story that's actually worth telling. And I think it was just people coming in and rescuing us every single day that made it work.
Well, you guys know better than I do that it's rare when you're in the movie business to go in with no ego, because that kind of runs Hollywood. I live in Sherman Oaks, and so we have I meet celebrities almost daily, and you never know what you're going to get when you're passing by them in the hallway. And I got invited to Universal Studios one time to go see a set of a show. I won't mention which show because I don't want. I'm about to say something bad about the actors, but I went to go and they had me park in like the main, and these guys do have trailers, so they had me park in the main actors parking spot, and they just told me to park there, and I thought, what if he shows up and here's my little Nissan Rogue parked in his spot. It was this moment of I'm kind of afraid of people here. I'm out of my element as a priest and as someone who runs a very small parish, and you have to have no ego as well. I was afraid. It was like a real deep fear. So the fact that you guys went into this with no ego and were able to produce a movie where these men in this movie were basically having their comeuppance for their entire life up to this point. So basically, for our listeners, this movie, the entire movie is, except for the flashbacks, takes place in the cell where Maximilian Kolbe died. And so it sounds like you guys, it seems to me that you weren't trying to make anything comprehensive, but you were rather making a contribution to the devotion to St. Maximilian Kolbe, about the part that we may not have. I mean, everybody thinks about, of course, how he died, but you certainly show the scene where he volunteers to go for the man who has a wife and kids. We have flashbacks to his own childhood and his life in Japan and things like that come up that are able to contribute in that way. But there was a certain humility to the way that you provided one short 13-day. Basically, the whole movie takes place in the 13 days in the cell, and the relationships he has with the other his cellmates takes front and center. Let me say this: there was one thing that I
want to comment on one thing before you move on. Is just I'm actually loving the description of the hostel that y'all stayed in, because I'm thinking of when Father Michael and I went on this pilgrimage that I'm talking about. We in order to make it more affordable for people, we got the tour company to cut down a little bit on the hotels that they normally use, just so that more people would be able to it'd be more possible for more people to go. And so the hotels were already not as fancy as the hotels that this company usually uses. But then what really got them was we stayed in a pilgrim house towards the end of the pilgrimage in Mariapoc in Hungary, because that's the only place to stay at this particular pilgrim site that we wanted to go to. And which when we showed up to this pilgrim house, we found out on the bus ride there that they had been out of power for a couple of days. And so they didn't have power. There was water dripping from the ceiling in the, anyways, it just was it was such a mess. And for most of the pilgrims, that was the best part of their pilgrimage, was staying at this place. And this was where they really had the most profound experiences. And we had just so many beautiful stories of communion with one another and things. But I'm loving the description of the hostel, because so much of the art of acting is getting into the headspace of the person that you're portraying in a film, right? And so I would imagine that for the actors who were in the film, it was at least easier to do that from a hostel than staying in a 5-star hotel, and sleeping on cots and being bunked with all these other people. And so I think in some way that was though it wasn't what you anticipated, I think that was probably really just providential.
Yeah, it's true. And I think with what we were speaking about earlier, just with like, quality control and everything. Yeah, I mean, this did have a much, I mean, aside from just like the Holocaust as the world knows it to be, this is a unique sliver of time where, Auschwitz is much smaller. It wasn't the massive killing machine that it was. And so there's like, I had to learn about that. I didn't really, I knew a decent amount because we'd done the short film years prior, but, doing a feature film and, actually putting something out in the world that would, be on IMDb and would be in theaters and stuff like that, it's like, this has to be done right. And I think some of that, these are, though we don't know the 9 other men who he died with, these were real people who had their lives stolen from them. Mm-hmm. They didn't get to decide. Nobody signed up to be in Auschwitz. I mean, unless they were doing so knowing that they would die, in like protest or something. So, I think at least for myself artistically, like it wasn't just like, oh, it has to be good because cinema has to be good. I mean, I personally hold that, to things I make, but I think it got taken to a level of sacrifice beyond other projects I had ever worked on, because we're telling people's stories. Like those 9 other men, so many thousands of people, names have just been lost to history because of that atrocity. And so we're getting, each person, like, and I think the actors like took that serious level as well. And yeah, the dorm kind of hostile situations contributed to that. But there was, I think overall, like, I think we all brought a different level of intensity and like showing up spiritually and work ethic and all of that. Everyone kind of showed up in their own way. But in terms of like how it would, everything had to look right and be right and look accurate as much as we could make it. It's like, well, you don't get like, it's just not a forgiving, genre. You're representing people's lives who were taken.
It feels sacred, and I think the sacrifices that were called forth from every single person were called forth just by that immediate sense of the sacred that was there, of the graveness, and of the sacredness of the topic in general. Like, I think that there is a way that we could have made this that was just in some way like Auschwitz, like violence horror porn. Like it could have just been this, like, look how bad this was, and it could have been very historically accurate and visually appealing and beautiful, but it wouldn't have called forth the same level of investment because there wasn't a journey of redemption that each person and each artist was sort of being called to in order to articulate or make the film. Like everybody had to have this willingness to say, like, here's my suffering that I've gone through that relates to this, that is the part of my human nature where I can step into this story. And somehow through the meditation collectively on this story, I have to open myself up to God, open myself up to hope, in order to have the experience that we're depicting on set. And the relevance of that was immediately evident to everybody that was participating. Like, why are we doing this? Because there's people out there who need this message of hope in order for them to, like, find God, to survive, to be healed. Like, because that was so personally evident to us through what we were experiencing as we were telling the story. Oh, one thing I just wanted to say, Andrew, when you're talking, your mic is hitting your and it's doing a pop, pop.
Yeah, so that's what that was.
I can keep it like this. Yeah,
good.
Thanks. Yeah, and there was also like, something that every shoot day, and this is actually one of the big reasons why I was like, I hadn't read the script yet, but Anthony asked me to be a part, and I said yes, was because we'd worked on things together, and in those projects, they were like spiritual in their root, and each shoot day or each moment when we kind of reconvened, we'd start with a meditation and prayer. And, like film industry stuff, like everybody has different spiritual perspectives. They're coming to a job, not necessarily like to church. There are also some people who are like, they're basically consider themselves missionaries. So, I still don't like, everybody's coming from different worldviews. And Anthony guided everyone from day one of our filming with a prayer and guided meditation. And, by the end, like, you're hearing sniffles and like, it's, this is like some really, really deep, heavy stuff, the subject matter. And so it's asking from that. And so, man, you get a meditation in there and like people start crying and like people bring that soul just like intuitively. It didn't make sense not to.
Right.
There was still friction. There was still like a timeline that was really hard. But everybody on our set like sacrificed a lot of themselves. So
Have you gentlemen ever seen the movie Calvary?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a lot of this movie that kind of reminded me of some similar themes, and I want to read right now one of your quotes at the end of the movie. I know the version we saw may not be the final, but anyway, I believe, hopefully, I'm hoping you'll keep these quotes in there.
Okay.
But you have the Jerzy Bilecki quote at the end, and it says, "Because of Father Kolbe, we were aware that someone among us in this spiritual dark night of the soul was raising the standard of love on high. Therefore, it is not overcome by oppressors and overwhelmed by helplessness." There was this sign, and just obviously Maximilian Kolbe was such a father figure to every other man in that room, the Jews, the atheists, everybody, and so I saw this in that movie Calvary. I very much interpreted the scene, if you remember, of him seeing the two men kind of leaning on the widow's husband's casket, and that's what convinces him to stay instead of flying and fleeing. I always saw that as he had this moment of realization that I am kind of the sign of the sacred in this entire town. There's nothing sacred. Kind of everything's been lost in this town, and so he saw himself as kind of hanging on to that sacredness. And then I think at the end of the movie, I won't give it away, but at the very end of the movie, those last scenes you see at the very end, kind of you see how much of an impact he had on the town, And so when there's, this goes back to family systems and parts where we've had Dr. Jerry Crete on the podcast before to talk about how kind of one person in an organization, and I do this as a pastor, and I'm sure you do this to the two of you as directors. One person can really impact the entire community of a set or of a church or of a family. And so in this cell with these 9 other men, it really was him, Father Kolbe, as you showed so very well, that even though he got so much pushback throughout the time, but especially in the beginning. By the way, I think whoever casted the atheist, he was brilliant. What a great actor the atheist was. I was really struck by him over and over and over again. But the fact that Maximilian Kolbe was able to be this for them in various ways reminded me of the priest in the movie Calvary and how that really does impact us. And I think the moment where he really became a father to me was the brilliance of the confession scene, where he hears their confessions publicly, and because they desire that, and then he gives his confession. And I've oftentimes thought, men think about these things, Mother. I know it's confusing, but like if I'm going down in a plane or if I'm in a situation like that, there's no priest there, I'm absolutely confessing my sins to whoever's there. Like I'm confessing my sins to one another. And I thought, this is exactly what it is. Like he just in the moment, especially since I won't give it away, but the confession started impacting the men in the room itself. Like I'm giving my confession, but it actually impacts you. So the desire to be forgiven even by the men in the room was so beautiful. And then Father Maximilian Kolbe was also able to, I've actually had a great chance to hang out with a few men and women who I really do believe will be acknowledged saints one day. and I've hung out with them enough that I've seen their dark side. I've seen their sin. I've seen their struggles, and I love that you even showed in this movie. Yes, he's a saint, but here he had to confess his own sins to these other men. That obviously wasn't sacramental, but that was a moment that the Bible says confess your sins to one another. And he was able to do that, and this very bonding moment of the vulnerability of these men. I'd love to hear more about that scene, the confession scene, and how you came up with that, and what the inspiration was, and maybe what the results were.
Well, I mean, I think that it's confession itself is an incredibly dramatic experience, human experience. Anything where you're divulging the things that you want to keep secret about yourself to another human being is essentially dramatic. It's like the sharing of a secret. And I think any movie, ultimately, there's secrets and there's revelations that has to happen in every movie in some way, because that's a part of the human story, and the human experience is like either the decision to reveal oneself or to not, to love or to not. And I think ultimately, I knew that St. Maximilian Kolbe, if he is who I think he is, that as a priest, his goal must have been to get the other men to confess to him. Like at some point, that had to be the main objective, and to sort of prepare them for their deaths as a pastor. So I think what was interesting to me was the challenge of trying to do that for people who did not, who weren't already ready to confess, who were not coming to him asking him for that, and not perhaps ready for it, but also the way that death sort of brings people to a willingness that perhaps would be surprising. So I thought that would be a really interesting, I guess, thing to explore in the script. It would be to have a moment where that does happen because of the way that the pressure of starvation death starts to knock on their door. And I felt like that would be a very realistic thing. And then I think anytime writing a scene, it's really my job as the writer to empathize with each character enough to really believe that while I'm writing their voice, I believe that their voice is the correct voice. They're the right ones. And I think a lot of times when people enter into a scene like this, they have sort of an objective for where it should go and what they want to happen. And that's part of why these movies end up being so fake and so cheesy, is that they kind of turn everybody else that's not the saint into this sort of two-dimensional NPC, and they turn the saint into this sort of also two-dimensional hero that doesn't have anything that is a real challenge for them. And kind of flipping that and being like, I actually don't know what would happen. What would I say if I was this character Albert that hears this happening and I just thought, I would laugh. I think that the divine irony of this moment, it's so stupidly, absurdly funny that we're all here. So that's where I followed. And I was just like, what would happen? And it's almost like this little kind of thought experiment to just bounce each character off of each other until we get to something that feels like that would be real. And then, it was up to Andrew really to figure out, okay, how do we film this in a way that is dramatic and interesting and isn't just like a static thing. I love these long conversations where people are divulging themselves to each other, but that doesn't play very well in cinema if you just have this one sort of static long thing. So I basically sat and rehearsed with the actors until they got to the point where the scene was real. And while we were doing that, Andrew was kind of working secretly with his camera. We always had these plans where we would plan these things out ahead of time and try to block them. And then we would get in the room and the actors would do things that were completely different than what we thought they would do, but was the right thing. You could see they understood their characters enough to where they could improvise with the blocking in a way that felt real that we had missed. And so it just meant that the whole Rubik's Cube of all the shots that we had planned just had to get thrown out pretty much every day.
Out the window, all of it. And we did so much work. It's called blocking. Blocking is it's from, stage plays and stuff. where you're going to put people in the stage with, relative to the camera when it comes to cinema. And it's really important when most of your film is in a prison cell. We mapped it out with little like Lego figures and figuring out different angles. We used software and, like storyboarding and stuff, and came up with all these like really good plans and symbolism, and took a ton of inspiration from the movie 12 Angry Men. I think it was 1950s or like 53 or something. Classic movie. The pro of that movie is that it was a radio play and then I think a stage play and then a movie. So it had gone through these stages artistically through multiple directors and hands before it became a movie, which is a masterpiece still. A cinematography masterpiece. But then this is a story that hasn't been any of those. So what the question that kept coming, what things boiled down to is like, does this feel right? Does this feel like believable and natural? And the actors who are now like really embodying them as Anthony worked one-on-one with them and really getting to a very deep place with each of them with who they were. A lot of them would inform us like, well, no, I'd want to be here. I'd want to be close to the window. I'd want to be in this corner over here because I feel safe here. I'd want to be in the middle of the room because I'm wanting to keep an eye on everyone or be, each person brought their own motivation at different points in the story. And so, I mean, we had marinated in this like 12 Angry Men type like symbolism and like how you compose people and stuff. But then once we actually got there and we were like we were in the deepest, we had all been, the actors, Anthony, myself, like anyone working on it, we were all deep in the story. And then all of a sudden everything just like, though we had to unplug everything, it all like, rewired very quickly because we were so familiar and like deep in the story together. And so what I would do is like, I had my iPhone and I knew roughly what millimeter I'd have to zoom in for the lenses that I wanted to use. And I'd be working with my, my second camera / like assistant, Patrick, to, okay, we're going to shoot here. And like, while they're rehearsing, I'm like, okay, you're going to be here. I'm going to be there. And then when they say that line, I'm going to come over here. And, by the time we were ready to shoot, like, of course it took a while for us to get to that point. And thankfully the confession, like that whole scene, I love, because we were at a point in production where we were all flowing and we had all just kind of learned each other's kind of quirks and how we work together.
That one, almost all of it was one taked. Like I think we took one shot of each moment and then we're just like, well, we have it in the can. That was great. we had to because we
actually needed.
Yeah, because we had another half day that we had to shoot,
right.
Everything else. So we were just like, hopefully that was good enough. And it felt really like profound and moving when we were there. So we knew, there was a gem in there that we would get to dig out in post. So. Yeah.
I think as we like got, partly this was on production, but it was also in editing as well. I think, and I know this is like partly like how you were writing him just as a person, not as a saint, not as a priest, but just a person.
Yeah.
And who was he, and I like, personally, I feel like working in the edit with Anthony and then a couple of other, of our editors, like, I feel like I've like these little scenes that are in our film are actually, there's like serious real life lessons on like, I have found myself, especially in kind of a season, it feels like, at least in the Western world, maybe all over the world, that things are divisive and we're kind of being tempted to really have disdain towards people who just see the world differently than us. Here's this guy, like, forget about, priest, saint, vocation, any of that. This guy who's just really devoted to living in love and just treating other people not as, whatever they labeled themselves, but just as another human and loving the commandant, like the Nazi commandant, equally as much as he loved like one of the main characters who the film kind of centrally follows. Like there was no difference to him, it seemed like. And that's the Kolbe that I've like kind of come to learn and look up to. And like looking at the accounts that we have from the time in Auschwitz, like there are stories that are like this. Like I think Anthony, you wrote his character well, and then Marcin, who played Kolbe, did a good job embodying that. Where it really like, maybe it's just because I've watched the film a million times now, but like it does feel almost like you could make like a whole book study on the film and like take it to heart. These scenes of just being very, very human, and not in any way one dimensional. And like how would I, you know, what would I do in that situation if someone was like confronting me in this way that this person confronted Kolbe? I probably wouldn't be that way. And so it's like, it's really taught me to like put my own ego aside and show up with love in situations that are really, really difficult too.
What you're describing is something that I actually made note of as I was watching the film. Was just, I was so moved by his interest in seeing the person in each person around him. Like it was important for him to hear the stories of the men that he was in the cell with, knowing that they were all going to die, right? This was one of the best messages I thought of the film, you know. And Anthony, you're saying this film is a film that gives hope, and I really think it does. I think it's, again, providential that it's coming out during the Jubilee of Hope, because the Christian, something we've talked about on the podcast before, is the Christian idea of hope is different than the secular idea of hope. Like the secular idea of hope is, I hope that this situation is going to change. Like the secular idea of hope is that the externals are going to change so that we have less suffering. I hope that the weather is good for my race on Saturday. So I also have a little bit of the secular version of hope. But there's like the Christian idea of hope is not, I hope that this suffering diminishes. It's that I believe that there's meaning in the suffering. And I'm hoping for something that's eternal, not something that's temporal. And so I was really, really moved by, like in the film, what Father Kolbe's, everything he's portraying is that the point of existence is not to not die, and it's not to not suffer. And so he's not trying to diminish any suffering. He's not, in small human ways, he is, like in the ways that he can, you know, like giving up a little bit of his water for someone else and so on and so forth. And so he is like diminishing suffering. Yeah, catching the rat. But there's something too about, like, one of my favorite lines in the movie was when one of the other prisoners says, after living in Auschwitz for however long, you know, says, I thought there was no good left in the world. And then I saw what he did yesterday, talking about Kolbe, trading with this man. And it was like just knowing that there was still good in the world, you know, or when Kolbe's singing, and I don't want to spoil the scene because it was one of my favorites, but when they, you know, afterwards, like some of the other prisoners or one of the other prisoners, you know, says like, do you see, it didn't save her. It didn't, like, it was pointless. You lost. And he says, basically like, maybe she wasn't saved from pain, but maybe she knew she wasn't alone. And so again, it's like the point is not to not suffer. The point is not to avoid pain, but the point is to know communion. The point is to know goodness. The point is to hope for those eternal goods, those transcendentals. Yeah.
Yeah, as we're looking at the night sky, and most of it is just black, there's pinpricks of light that if we get close enough to those pinpricks of light, they're blinding. And it's just such a, yeah, I mean, that's, I feel like, you know, the point of life is kind of all around us if we look for it. And of course there's darkness and it's overwhelming, but also the pinpricks, the more we draw ourselves closer to them, you know, even though they're far away, or they at least seem far away at times, you know, they're bright and they pierce through the darkness. And I see
It's
that in our
Samwise
movie.
Gamgee seeing the star in Mordor. It's
Yeah.
It's so funny. I was literally
These cliches.
I was literally like, sometimes you write things and you just don't kind of know where they came from. And there's this character in the movie, Freddy, who's sort of this right-hand man to Albert, who's this, the atheist of the movie, if you will. He's honestly, he's just like a romantic that was broken through his encounter with the world in a way that he was not ready for. But he has formed this really kind of funny friendship with this sort of strapping, huge, rather simple, rather violent, but like really good-hearted guy. And I think I was like, I was watching Lord of the Rings recently, and I was just like, dude, this is basically like Frodo and Sam, and I didn't realize it the whole time.
Yeah, it's for sure an archetype.
I was like, God dang it. Tolkien always got there first. Like I had no idea.
That's okay. We did it differently enough that you really have to be looking for it.
Now everyone's going to look for it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I will say one thing that you wrote that had an interesting Holy Spirit moment as I was watching it, and this kind of goes back to the idea I was mentioning earlier about Calvary, where one person can lead, can bring peace, or to a whole group. I've spent a lot of time in hospitals by hospital beds, watching people die, and I'm sure it's similar. Nurses could tell you the same thing. You see all kinds. You see people that die in absolute rage, right? They're mad at the nurse, they're mad at every family member that walks in. They're just grumpy, and the nurses and the priests just don't want to go in the room because they know they're going to get yelled at. The person is just in despair. It is very, very negative. And of course, you have all the patience in the world, hopefully, because they're dying and they're in a lot of pain. And then other people are just so peaceful, right? Mm-hmm. And I oftentimes think the way this person lived their life is how their last hour goes. Whether it's you're screaming and yelling and grumpy and mad, or you're just at peace. And I've seen both when people are dying. And so there's this saint that Mother and I often quote on this podcast, Saint Seraphim Sadov, a Russian saint who says, acquire stillness of heart and you will save 1,000 souls. Just acquire stillness of heart. And in your movie, you just showed Maximilian Kolbe had such a stillness of heart. There wasn't the anxiety, there wasn't the rage. One of my favorite scenes was when this is giving too much away, but when he smashed the rock and into ash and then anointed their heads with it. There was something about this transformation. But one thing that I at one point I turned on the closed captions, which were auto-generated. They weren't made by you guys. They weren't made by the movie. They were auto-generated.
They were terrible.
They were terrible. They were terrible.
English accents really tripped that up.
Yes, it did. But actually,
every time the dog barked, it said hello or something like that. Like it
said
the dog barking
go. Yeah, online. But one of the mistakes that there was actually of the Holy Spirit was that when the commandant says in his German accent, it seems your love and the love of your God has condemned them. And that's what the line is in the movie. Basically, I won't give it away, but anyway, he's saying it's your fault that they're going to die, right? It's your fault they're going to die. Your love of God and the love of your God has condemned these men to die. But the closed captioning, because of the accent, said, it seems your love and the love of your God has condemned sin instead of them. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. And I actually had to go back again to watch it and say, no, he definitely said them. Yeah. And yet it said sin. And I just thought, what an amazing closed captioning, German accent kind of mistake that was made. That was the closed captioning spoke the truth,
Anthony planned that.
Yeah.
That was intentional.
I told the robot. That's part of my direction.
And I do have one more question before you go. This is another Easter egg. Obviously, the movie's called Triumph of the Heart. As I mentioned earlier, the quote, acquire stillness of heart, and you'll save 1,000 souls. There's something about the heart. We Byzantines love the heart. We have tons and tons of theology about it. But the Nazi record that they put on to blare throughout, it had triumph in the name of the song or on the record. I couldn't get it. I couldn't see it. Is that a reference to the title of the movie? Is that a mocking in a sense?
No, yeah. So they had a propaganda film. It was the most famous film at the time called Triumph of the Will or Triumph des Willens. And that's what that was not filmed during principal photography. It was a gramophone that I bought off Facebook Marketplace after a lot of research, because I mean, this was like, I think, Anthony, you'd always probably desired to have this shot in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever communicated or what, but yeah, I basically made, it's the funny story is I had to make the sticker. You can get Triumph des Villains, like gramophone, or it would have been like a shellac record. You can buy them, but they're very expensive. And it's like, I just need it for a prop. And so I did the research to get the sticker to put on the actual record.
Wow. And then he proceeded to put them on all of my things.
As a
bunch of swastikas everywhere.
Yeah.
It's actually like
it would just ambush me with.
Just a terrible inside joke that makes no sense to anyone else. But like I had the minimum order was 10, so and I made sure, it's like, hey guys, I'm making a World War II movie. I'm not a Nazi. Please print this. Don't let your AI thing catch it as like hate speech or something to print. This is a prop. And okay, we'll make sure. So we got it. I stuck it on there. We got the shot. I still have I love gramophone players because you crank them. They're so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it was. I mean, that's the play on words.
Yeah, the idea is just that I think Kolbe is, in his vulnerability and in his weakness, is the one who ultimately is victorious. Mm-hmm. And kind of the poetry of the movie is that by the end, even though Kolbe has like given up all worldly power, he is more powerful than this commandant who has sort of taken all of that for himself, but then finds himself alone and unloved and rejected and going mad, to be honest. And that is actually a true thing. It was one of the things that I was struck by when I was reading and researching for the script, was that shortly after this movie, Fritsch gets divorced and loses his family. And then very shortly after that, he's sort of court-martialed for corruption because he was hated even by his own people, and was sent to the Russian front. And we don't know exactly when he passed away, but he died a very brutal and very sad death. I think it was basically the urban legend has it that he was killed by Jews who, communist Jews from Soviet Russia, who found him and tortured him and all that stuff. But I think that the point being that there's this contrast between the Christian view of what it means to be weak and to be naked with Christ, that is where the deepest power of the world actually resides, in the Lamb, and that the desire to seek power and to gain it and control the world, especially as a response to suffering, that we can avoid suffering by forcing the world to kind of conform to our will, that is actually a worldview that will drive anyone mad and drive anyone, frankly, to be a terrorist to others around them. And I think that is really kind of what the whole conceit of the movie is saying.
Yeah, as you talked about, Father, being in you've been in tons of rooms with people dying, and I mean, what is there at the end of life? What do we have? What was all this for? Grabbing for power for what? There has to be something beyond this and something more to hope for than just the things that you don't even get to take with you. And so triumph of will, it's almost an oxymoron that, and of course, thankfully we don't all speak German, and the World War II is behind us. But that was the ideology. And it's just such a beautiful story that we got to tell and make, where this actually happened. You guys went to Auschwitz and took the tour. That story, that was 1941. Auschwitz was liberated in 45? And so this story was passed on through these years, these torturous years, this very strong beacon of hope in a dark place. This really happened. You take the tour and it's one of the stops there. Yeah, I don't know. Exactly. Like words just don't do the story justice. Not even a film does it justice. It really is something to meditate on and like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the comments that was beautiful about, a very convicting comment for Maximilian Kolbe in the movie was that, it's not about a book or a newspaper, it's about a man, and I think it was his bishop who was telling him, a bishop who was telling him, basically you need to go do the work yourself and not only focus on the writing of these magazine articles. And he had this kind of moment of conviction. I need to watch it again or hear more about it, find out like what was the point behind all that. But I was like, heck yeah, that's right. Go be a man, go be a father, go be a shepherd. Into closer to home. So yeah.
Well, this has been really great. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Did anyone have any last minute comments before we close out?
Yeah, I would love to say, I guess one thing that I was sort of even realizing as we were talking about this, which is that one of the reasons why Andrew and I ended up like having the ability to collaborate together. Both of us are people who have, I think perhaps in the past, like really struggled to find other collaborators that we could trust because we were always the ones that were willing to go further. But both of us are 12-step guys. We're both in a 12-step community. And then Martian, the actor that played Maximilian Kolbe, is also a guy who had a reversion to the Lord through the 12 steps. And part of the actual, I guess, like methodical process of those steps is a release of the will. Like it's actually kind of a formal thing that you have to accept that you, by your willpower and your desire to, they call it self-will, you have made your own life insane. And you've created insanity for everyone else around you. And that it's actually by letting go of that will that you are able to like digest the power of God into your life that you need in order to overcome something that you can't control yourself. And I think, I guess what I'm sort of saying is this sort of gratitude to these programs and honestly to like the pain and sort of devastation that sort of caused all of us who were in leadership in the movie to have to go through those in order to be able to come out the other side to tell the story, because I really do think that there was this strange pattern, I guess, in the fact that God had like taken all of us through like these addictions and these sort of, dark nights of the soul before handing us the movie to make. So it's a really beautiful thing to get to be like making a movie about the heart and about Kolbe's life from that perspective of kind of letting go and surrendering to God.
Beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen. How can people learn more? How can they watch it?
Yeah, so if this is coming out next week, in the week of September 12th. September 12th is our theatrical release. But because we're an indie movie, we are going to be doing a very limited theatrical run. And it's going to be kind of like a marathon where slowly as theaters start to see that there's more and more demand, they'll start putting up more screens. And so what you can do is you can look at your local theater, just be like checking to see if they have it up. You can call them and ask them to carry it. I know that this is sort of an old school boomer thing to do, but it actually, just trust me that the whole theatrical system is completely this way. Like it runs like it's 50 years old. So yeah, calling actually matters. It will make an impact. The theaters are already getting calls from like our community, and that's already sort of like rallying a sort of flag up to the bookers at the top of the sort of pyramid. But if it's not there, make that call. And the other thing is, if you're somebody of means, you can also do a buyout, which means you can go to our website, www.triumphoftheheart.com/buyout, or you can just go to the menu and find it. You can buy out a screen, and the tickets will sell. Like, everybody that's doing this for us, like very few people are just doing it as a straight donation. They're basically like reselling the tickets or donating them to their parish. But given enough lead time, like planned a couple weeks out, you can force the theaters in some way to carry the movie by doing this. It's not forced, but it really kind of pushes the pushes the urgency on them because they have money that they could potentially lose if they don't carry it. And usually they'll open up more screens. So right now it's all about the theatrical release, like going on opening weekend, making sure that it gets to your theater, and really rallying people to go and really treating that like it's a whole community thing. Because if people wait for it to go to streaming, it'll just rot in some sort of back alley of the internet without getting a chance to live. Because we are, like I said, we're a very small indie movie with no studio backing. So the only thing that sort of gets the distribution momentum to happen is the Catholic community showing up and advocating for it.
And I would add that it is a movie worth doing everything you can to see in theaters. I think that you'll hear the sniffles around you in the theater. I really do believe that wherever this, whatever room you're in with other people, like this is creating sacred space for people that, I don't know, hopefully you walk out of that theater and you're looking around thinking like, oh my gosh, we just endured that. Like, wow. Like it just kind of makes you
conversations
think
that are
about
made
life.
possible. Yeah. Afterwards are really profound. And it's really, I think the spiritual experience for everybody kind of comes and is amplified by each person's presence in the film, in the theater. So, yeah.
Is Kolbe tickets still, is that a domain to plug?
KolbeMovie.com. Yeah, KolbeMovie.com.
Okay.
People can go to find that. It's
KolbeMovie.com.
not reset up with new tickets yet because, maybe next week it will be. We just don't know when and where all the theaters are that are going to put their tickets up. So hopefully by next week we'll have a way to sort of coalesce them all together, but we don't know if we'll have that yet. But you can
like plug
give it a
this
shot
next week or something.
Yeah, I know.
You do have it figured out. Hopefully
Show
you can
notes.
just
Put it in the show notes.
show notes. Or,
Yeah, we can do that for sure.
Wonderful.
Great.
Well, let's go ahead and skip the extra stuff, Mother, and just jump to prayer intentions.
Great. I would like to ask for prayers for, actually, I'll ask for prayers for Steve Davies and his family, who are also working on making a beautiful film of good quality. They're doing one about soon-to-be Saint Pier Giorgio Frassati, saint by the time this comes out. And so prayers for them as they're embarking upon a very similar endeavor.
I was going to say the exact same thing, Mother. You stole the
Too
prayer
bad.
intention out of my mouth.
Think of someone else.
Yeah, if you guys could please, he's one of our audio editors, and he's now raising money to begin this film. So it'll be a very exciting thing. And the Mother, go ahead.
Is this on
Anthony?
Kickstarter right now? I feel like there's an there's like an Orthodox movie that I saw, like a black and white thing that was on Kickstarter.
It's not that.
Okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that. It would be similar though. They are in the Kickstarter phase. I don't know if it's on Kickstarter like the actual app. I'm not sure, but anyway, it may be. You can check it. Just go. I don't know. Well, anyway,
Frassati film is what it's.
Frassati film. There we go.
Yeah.
Let's Google that. Let's look that up. So then the mother of two of my godchildren is probably going to be heavily involved as well here in LA. So you guys pray for that. Okay, I will ask then for prayer since it was a total switch up. I will ask for prayers just for these two gentlemen and their families, Anthony and Andrew, that you guys are able to actually grow in holiness through this process. I always pray for couples as they approach their marriage that the stress of the preparation for the marriage gets in no way of the sacrament and of the beauty of that day and that moment. So I'll ask that all the attacks of the devil that is going to attack these men and their families through stress, anxiety, worry, anything in the world is done away with, and that you may have the stillness that Saint Seraphim talks about.
Amen.
Andrew, would you like to give us a prayer intention?
Yeah, and just on this whole topic of, this point in history, people who are facing starvation and injustice and cruelty around the world, families and individuals, just wherever that's happening, whether it's on the news or not.
Thank you. Anthony?
My prayer intention is desperate and immediate, which is just that the theaters, we've submitted all of these around 450 buyouts that and crowdfunding campaigns that have kind of finished to the theaters, and they're being very slow to confirm them. And it's sort of a gamble and a waiting game now, that's sort of out of our hands. But I just pray for them to, I guess, see it and take it, like that they would say, yeah, this is a little bit unorthodox that we're doing it this way. But we really want to work with you guys. So I guess I'm just praying for all the theater bookers to show up and have a moment of grace, and to speed along the process of getting these all booked. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Father Michael. Can you give us a blessing?
Absolutely. May the Lord bless you and keep you, cause his face to shine upon you, have mercy on you. May all of you who are listening here call upon your patron saints and the saints that you know, the saints you love, as well learning about others, that these great cloud of witnesses we have that are always available to us for intercession at the throne of God, that we may be inspired by their life and touched by the grace that they ask our Lord for, to become saints yourself, that you may see the gifts that the Holy Spirit has given you, that you may be a leader in the way that our Lord has invited you to, that you may get this stillness of heart that allows you to lead others to true witness, to true martyrdom in a way that is given to you as a gift, that you may find joy in this, that you may have hope in this world and in the next. May our Lord bless you today and always, and grant you even the salvation of your soul. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Love you, Mother. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Love you too, Father.